Hey there guys, this is Flamzeron, aka YouTube's Tasuke, and the soul still burns. Because this game seems to be doing pretty well, and I'm actually really glad. Now I'm gonna give y'all my 2 cents on it. And that game is Soul Calibur 6. Or as the narrator likes to say, Soul Calibur 6. I don't think I did it well at all. It's the guy from 5. I think his name's Paul St. Peter. It's not the original Soul Calibur 6, that guy. Even though I think they probably replaced him even before, 4 maybe, or he at least sounds different, but I'm getting kind of off track, though. It's a little relevant in terms of the quality of this game and the voiceovers, but we'll get into that as we continue onward, but yeah, I'm going to talk about Soul Calibur 6. I know I'm a bit late, but I like to do things at my own pace, as you guys know. But yeah, so to start off with, I played the PS4 version. Geralt is still the guest character in pretty much all versions of the game. There's no like console exclusive like there was in Soul Calibur 2 and 4, even though in 4, they gave us the other one anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, it's the same character, Geralt from The Witcher. He's pretty cool. In terms of the presentation, I guess I'll start with that. The presentation, I think, is pretty good. It starts, when you first load up the game, it starts off, and they play this a couple of times, which I don't know how I felt about this, but they do a recap of Soul Edge, or Soul Blade. Because for those of you who don't know, Soul Calibur 6, story-wise, is supposed to be kind of a reboot to the Soul Calibur series. It's they're sort of Mortal Kombat-ing it, if that makes any sense, because for those of you with Mortal Kombat 9, or just Mortal Kombat on the PS3 and Xbox 360, it was a reboot of the Mortal Kombat series, but it was rebooting 1, 2, and 3. And that's sort of what this one is doing here as well. It's more or less doing 1, 2, and 3. I mean, 3 only had like 4 original characters, including Olkadan. But this has Edgemaster, so that's sort of our mimic character, if you will. Even Inferno is not really a mimic character this time around, as far as I can tell. But yeah, the story mode is basically a reboot of a 1, 2, and 3. It really kind of depends on what character you're playing as in the story mode. They give you a main story mode to play, and I think it's during the prologue of the main story mode where they show the same background, history lesson on Soul Blade, where basically talks about Cervantes being possessed by Soul Edge, Sophitia destroying one of the swords, getting the shards inside her, Taki coming in to save her, and all that stuff. And then it goes into Keelik's story. The main story mode has you alternate between Keelik, Xianghua, and Maxi. They're sort of like, I guess, the 3 main characters, I suppose. Starts off at Lingxing Su Temple. Hard to say that. And it shows Keelik and his sister, and I say that in air quotes, Xianglian, and it shows them giving a little thing about what they've been doing and whatnot, and talking about how they're what's the word? They're presented. I don't know the right word. Basically, they're given sacred items. Keelik gets the Kali Yuga, which is that I was almost at spear, that staff that he uses. That red one with like the gold sort of like tints on the on both edges, and Xiangliang was supposed to get a Krita Yuga. There we go, which was a sword, but the sword has gone missing. It's kind of implied she knows where it is, I think, but we'll get to that later on. Instead, she takes Devapara Yuga, which is that mirror little necklace-like bracelet thing. Or not, bracelet probably isn't the right word, but that like thing that you've seen Keelik wear in Soul Calibur 1, where he's got like that like thing across his shoulder. It's supposed to repel against the evil seed and the manifestation and whatnot. Well, shit goes down in Ling Xingsu Temple, and from what I remembered in the lore of Soul Calibur, I think this is them kind of changing things a little bit, because they are probably going to change some things. I think, from what I remember, Shang Liang was the one who was protected by the Vapara Yuga, and then Keelik was infected. She gave it to Keelik, and that turned her infected, and then Keelik had to kill her. Whereas this time around, it seems like Keelik went out of his way to find the Vapara Yuga, almost like he steals it or whatever. And Shang Liang is already kind of possessed by the manifestation. I say possessed, or corrupted is probably a better word. She looks really friggin' creepy in her mugshot, by the way. I'll try to show it if I can. As I'm recording this, I don't know what all I'm going to show. I'll probably show a little bit of, the story mode and maybe some custom character stuff. And Libra of Soul, I think, is pretty important because they really like that mode. But she looks really freaking creepy. Like, remind me in the comments if you want, and I'll try to take a screenshot if I don't show it. If I do show it, you've been warned. She looks freaking creepy. The artwork in the game looks really good during, like, the mug shots when the characters are talking. I think they look really cool. So yeah, Keelik kills Shang Liang. He wakes up at Edgemaster's place, and he trains them how to handle the evil seed and control, stuff. And this, like, in Soul Calibur 3 and 4, and obviously 5, because considering who Keelik is at that point, Keelik is very much, he feels kind of more like, maybe not a master, but like he's definitely a higher student. Whereas in this game, he seems very much like he's still kind of new to fighting. I mean, granted, again, this section of the story is basically a retelling of Soul Calibur 1, which, that reminds me, they also do show that scene of Siegfried picking up Soul Edge, and it, like, clamping on his arm, and him being like, which I actually recently watched the Soul Edge version of that, or the Soul Blade. I'm gonna kind of alternate just because I'm kind of used to saying Soul Edge at this point, mainly because I saw a video kind of talking about like secret characters in the game, and the YouTuber kept saying Soul Edge, which is the Japanese title of the game. Over here we got it as Soul Blade. I have it. I don't really play it that much, frankly. I don't really think it's that good, but I think once Soul Calibur came around, like they kind of improved on everything greatly. But that original scene of Siegfried's ending, the way he's crying and wallowing, like it's kind of scary. And I remember my friend, I remember he was telling me he got scared from it too, and I'm just like, but then I was like, that actually is kind of scary, especially, thinking about the situation. In this version, it's not as scary, but they, as opposed to doing like a little slideshow thing with a voiceover, like they did for like the actual Cervantes Sophidia fight, they actually have like an in-game engine cutscene, to show Siegfried getting taken over by Soul Edge and becoming Nightmare, the Azure Knight. So definitely a very important scene. I just wanted to kind of throw that in. But yeah, so Edgemaster trains Keelik, and he goes on a journey to try to, combat Soul Edge and all that, and continue to train. There he meets Maxi and his crewmen, and of course the whole thing with Astaroth killing Maxi's crewmen. So Maxi's all like, "Fuck Soul Edge," and it kind of I don't remember if this was I don't remember if this was in the lore or not, but they almost kind of implied that Keelik also had a hand in killing some of Maxi's crewmen. I might be kind of misunderstanding the lore and what was shown in the game, because they show what, if you see the trailers, one of the things they teased in one of the early trailers was Keelik getting into like this demonic form, and that's basically him going malfested, which I think is definitely something they kept from the original, because I remember like Keelik kind of being at war with his malfested state, but it was almost like a higher level malfested kind of thing. His skin turns all purple, his eyes go glow, and like his hair like is flowing and all that stuff, because it's in a ponytail, but the ponytail breaks off, kind of like when Trunks goes Super Saiyan during the Cell arc. And you can activate that. I think that's called critical mode or something. Like, you can do that just for the sake of example as well. Geralt's is where he drinks a potion, I think. I'm not too sure. I don't know much about The Witcher to know like what exactly he's doing, but they show him like drinking something. He's like, ugh, and he gets all powerful. Whereas Keelix, he goes all malfested on you, and that doesn't translate into the custom characters as well. Like if you pick Keelix style, you're not going to go Super Saiyan or whatever, or you're not going to go super malfested or what have you. So Keelix kind of trying to control that. He and Maxie are going by boat, trying to find Soul Edge and get revenge on Astaroth, or get revenge on Maxie's crewmen by killing Astaroth and killing Soul Edge and whatnot. And they're trying to figure out where Soul Edge is. There they meet Xianghua, who has a sword, and Shiz. And turns out it's Krita Yuga later on, but she's actually also looking for Soul Edge. So the three of them kind of come together, and they are able to figure out that Nightmare is going to be in Alstrinsburg, and so they go there, and it's sort of like, it basically just kind of leads up to that big battle. Maxie stays behind to fight Astaroth. It's implied he dies, even though I'm pretty sure he doesn't. And then they go into Keelik and Xianghua fighting Nightmare. Keelik is able to overcome his malfested form, and so he kind of uses that. And then they show Xianghua, the Krita Yuga, revealing itself as being Soul Calibur, because that's actually what Krita Yuga is. It's Soul Calibur. And I think I'm a little confused on the relationship between Xianglian and Xianghua. I think they're siblings. I, for some reason, thought that they were maybe, it was like a mother-daughter thing. That doesn't really make too much sense, because that would mean that Xianglian is a lot older than she would probably appear. But I think it's a sibling thing. I think they're siblings. Or it might just be one of those, like, you know, like when it seems like when someone passes on, like it seems like a part of them is left in like a sibling or something. Like you look at them and it's almost like they look like the person who passed a little bit. I don't know. That's sort of a morbid thought, but I guess kind of something like that. And they save the day, but Soul Calibur is locked away in the astral chaos, and they just decide to escape and leave it there. And then it's all like, let's do things. And that's the main story, more or less, kind of paraphrased. I jumped into the story mode mainly because I wasn't really sure what kind of character I wanted to make for Libra Soul, so I did all the story modes, as you'll see. The story modes for each character is basically their lore for the game they came in. Like, for example, Raphael, for example, he came in during Soul Calibur 2, so his story mode is basically the lore information that was given in his profile in Soul Calibur 2. So basically, you know, with the evil seed, his aristocratic family and like his like partners like betray him. They think he's like a bad guy. He's having to like run and hide from them. Amy helps hide him by like leading them astray, and he's all like, there's a lot of crying in this game, by the way. And so Raphael vows to help Amy and like raise her and whatnot. I'll say Raphael's story is probably my favorite. Honestly, I'm a Huang boy first and foremost, but growing up, I really liked Raphael mainly because he was really cheap to use and he was really easy to play as well. You know, Triple Boda and Temple, which is back, and I think they kind of try to put a halt in between the Final Strike and if you were to try to like, you know, just combo it with a repeat of the first strike. I think the way they make it to where it takes a little longer to start up again. I think that's how they make it less cheap, but it's still there. So I think in terms of characters who are actually playable, because Huang isn't, he's in the game, but he's not playable. Raphael might be my favorite. In terms of characters to play as, I really like Gerald, but I'm getting to him later on. In terms of just regular characters, I like Raphael, I think. So yeah, like, basically his story is him running with Amy, trying to kind of figure things out. He ends up getting adopted into the Dumas family, and I think that's supposed to kind of tie into Soul Calibur 5. I don't remember if I actually did a formal review of Soul Calibur 5, but according to the lore and looking at stuff, it apparently Raphael was the new host of Soul Edge, which I find very interesting. Before obviously Pyrrha took over, but so basically, Raphael, he's able to sort of ensure Amy's safety and success, and and it even's like, he's even trying to like raise her and make her like give her an education. That something's like, now Amy, you need an education. His voice actor from I think 3 onward, I don't know if it's the same guy from 2. They sound really similar, but and Heather Hogan, who as Colette in Symphonia, she's back as Amy, and she does a good job, and she looks good too when they actually show her in like her sort of gothic garb, the purple and whatnot, the purple and black. I think she looks good, and Raphael looks good too. I don't like the little monocle thing they've got going on, or like that weird like glasses piece. I think that looks kind of weird. It seems to me kind of like they're trying to sort of go back to the roots of the character a little bit, maybe make him look a little more aristocratic rather than looking kind of vampiric, which apparently he's not even a vampire at all. He just fucking looks like one. I don't know why they did that. But here, I think they're trying to kind of make him look more regal. I think that's like that he's a noble. I think that's what they're going for. And it's kind of sad because I really kind of felt for his plight, because like he really just wants to make the world a better place for him and Amy. Like, sort of where the selfishness of it comes in, though, is where he starts doing research on Soul Edge, and he thinks like, oh, I need to get Soul Edge. And of course, by Soul Calibur 4, he's going to look for Soul Calibur, but his reasons kind of stay the same. And they show like that little thing of them hugging and stuff. It's like, how about some hot chocolate for a change? Where are you? Said Amy. And so that it's more like trying to kind of, it's almost like a little tease of like a more complete story or something. I will say this, and I know the game's been out for a little bit, like at least a month. Technically 2 months, because I'm recording this or almost 2 months, because I'm recording this on the 1st of December, and I don't know when it's going to go up. I'm going to try to get it up as soon as I can, but for both Raphael and Zasalamel, I have 2 little parts, like story missions, that I haven't unlocked yet, and I'm not really sure what's going on. I think it has something to do with Libra of Soul. I might have fucked myself on the Raphael one, because I did try to do his Libra of Soul one, but I'll get to that later on. If I don't, remind me in the comments, and I'll explain it. But there are 2, both in Raphael and Zasalamel, there are 2 story missions that I haven't unlocked yet, and I don't know if it's like locked because the DLC or something, because for those who don't know, we're getting 2B from Nier Automata, which is really cool. I'm looking forward to playing as her, and she's going to get her own story mode, I think, and it's going to tie into Ivy, so maybe Ivy will get an extra mission in her story mode as well. Who knows? But I'm really perplexed, and again, I think it has something to do with Libra of Soul. I've tried asking around, but no one seems to know, and either that or they won't help me. And I find it, I don't know, like I'm gonna have to check and see if there's a video on this subject, because I'm kind of stumped, and I really want to kind of see the rest of the story. I low-key want to just play through all of Raphael's story and like do his entire thing, because I really felt for his story. Like I think his story is probably the best, besides maybe Siegfried, just because of how angsty it is. But and the other stories, like that's basically how it goes. Cervantes, I think also, it's hard for me to say. I'm guessing probably Soul Calibur 1, because it talks about him coming back. For certain characters, like namely Siegfried and Aswell, who's one of the new characters they introduced, and he's a fucking maniac. And let's see, it's Siegfried, Cervantes, and Aswell, I believe, are the characters that you have to unlock in the story mode. They give them to you in like the gameplay and like the versus mode, but in terms of unlocking the story, you have to. For Cervantes, you have to do Ivy. For Siegfried, you have to do Nightmare, and I think for Aswell, you have to do Grow, who's another one of the new characters, and he shows up in the main story and fights Keelik, and then he shows up to kind of help Keelik and Xianghua. his story is pretty interesting. He almost kind of feels like an alternative Patroclus in terms of who he is as a character. He works for the Aval organization, and their job is to hunt Malfested, who they call outsiders. Like, they have like a specific code name for them. They don't call them Malfested, they call them outsiders. And his story is basically kind of like Aswell doing experiments on Grow after his retreat and failed attempt of defeating Nightmare. And what ends up happening is that Aswell, like, he either injects or he stabilizes the Malfestation inside Grow. So basically Grow is like half Malfested. He's able to kind of tap into it and go Super Saiyan, and that's a plot point for Libra of Soul. That sort that Grow story is basically him kind of doing his missions and trying to kind of figure out what Aswell is planning, as well as trying to hide the fact that he's a Malfested with his friends. Like, his friend Curtis finds out, and his friend Curtis goes Malfested, and it's like, I have to use my Super Saiyan powers. Ugh! In the Japanese version, he's actually voiced by Takahiro Sakurai. His English voice actor, I think, did a good job. The English cast, I think, is pretty good. I'll get to the English cast once I'm done with the story. And that's basically his story. I was kind of hoping that it was going to be a little more important to the main story. I know there's Libra of Soul that kind of continues the story a little bit, or at least Grow and Aswell's story, as well as shedding some light on other character stories, like how Mitsurugi and Geralt are going to meet each other and fight. It's like, I've met you before. And it's like, who are you? But that's basically Grow's story from what I remember. It was almost kind of more like I don't want to say a prologue, but it was kind of setting stuff up for Libra of Soul, I think, because both Grow and Aswell, like I said, kind of play a pretty important role in Libra of Soul, Libra of Soray, which would help me lead into the fact that sometimes I like to call Libra of Soul Tales of Soul Calibur, because of how the story is structured in that mode. I'll get to that as well. And with, I think Sophidia, it's Soul Calibur 1 as well. Cassandra shows up in her story, and she looks really nice. She's not playable or anything. It's just like a mugshot, but she's drawn nice. Same with my boy Huang. He's in Song Mi in his story. They even show him. They show him a few times, and he says his awesome, I shall vanquish the evils of the ages. He actually sounds really cool. It's not the same guy who voiced him in Soul Calibur 3, obviously. But he sounds pretty cool. And he wears like this blue mask thing. It's almost like they're making fun of the fact how in Soul Calibur 2, the assassin character was basically Huang style. And how Berserker was Rock style. Rock isn't even present in the game at all. I don't even think they have like any bio information on him, because they have biographies of these characters, and they have both the regular characters and like minor characters as well. So if you want to read up about them, you can. Like Huang and even Li Long as well. Like, I think it's any character that gets mentioned, or any character that's like major that shows up. Like in a Xianghua story, I think her name is Ling Yu, is her like rival and friend in her soldier school where they train to become soldiers. They have to fight each other. The lore with Ling Yu, though, I think is kind of interesting, because according to Libra of Soul, it turns out that Ling Yu is actually Leisha from Soul Calibur 5's older sister. As either sister or cousin, I believe. And I found that very interesting, because I think a lot of fans, including myself, assumed that Leisha was maybe related to Xianghua and maybe even Keelik, but it seems like no. It turns out they're not, which I find that very interesting. I know I'm kind of getting ahead of myself and talking about Libra of Soul, but yeah, I found that very interesting indeed. Yeah, and to get Cervantes, to get back to the point, to get Cervantes, you have to do Ivy. And hers, I think, is also, like, it's kind of, I think most of the characters, it's their Soul Calibur 1 storyline, unless they're from Soul Calibur 2. With Tira, it's her Soul Calibur 3. Zasalamel's, he doesn't even have a fucking story, because all he does is do a fucking recap of, you know, Soul Calibur and Soul. He talks about Algol. He talks about how in the lore of Soul Calibur, King Arthur had Soul Calibur, which I found that kind of interesting. The way he describes it, like he says, like, you know, it's debated whether or not, or he says like, I'm not sure if he really existed, which I kind of like that, because I know like among scholars in the world of academia and his historical, people who are interested in history, it's kind of debated on whether or not King Arthur actually existed. And I found that kind of interesting. He also chooses not to name Algol, even though he names Algol in Libra of Soul. Libra of Soul is definitely like the, if you want your answers for everything, here you go, kind of thing. Aswell's story was also pretty interesting because we kind of get a bit of a view into what he's trying to do. He's more or less the antagonist. When Soul Calibur 4 came out, they introduced a new type of character because we had Nightmare, who was the Soul Edge character, and then Siegfried became the Soul Calibur character, who basically uses Soul Calibur or Soul Edge. And then Soul Calibur 4, Algol used both. Because he created Soul Calibur. And he's also a god. So it's one of those things where like he's got that power. And he was in Soul Calibur 5 as well. And this, Soul Calibur 6, Aswell is trying to use alchemy and like science and whatnot to harness the power of Soul Calibur and Soul Edge. And he's got like these two gauntlets that allow him to use augmented like approximations of their powers, and he makes like fake shards of both Soul Calibur and Soul Edge. It ends up not working. He ends up going to like full power in Libra of Soul, and he was a pain to fight. But and that's more or less what he's trying to do. He is quite the character. What he's trying to do is create a new evil seed and call it the Ultimate Seed, because in his mind, becoming Malfested is like enlightening you. Like he feels like he talks about like love, like he's like when one of his attacks he does for the human race, because like he's all about trying to save humanity. He's a very Tails villain, and kind of like Zamasu from Dragon Ball as well, from the standpoint of like he's doing all this stuff in his mind for the greater good, even though he's going about it in a terrible, terrible way, and he's hurting people. One of my favorite scenes in his story mode is when like he's going somewhere, like these bandits try to attack him, but he beats them up, and he's all like, "Now fight to the death!" And then they fight to the death. He doesn't kill any of them, so he's like, "Fight to the death!" And then one guy starts like, "I won! Yes!" And he's like, "Bravo! Yes! Tell me, what is your relation with these people? Who is that man over there?" "Oh, that's John. He's been with me ever since I started this bandit job." "Ah, great. And who's that man over there?" "That's my little brother." And he's like, "Yes." And he like fucking jerks off. He doesn't actually jerk off, but that'd be funny if he did. But like, I clapped at the end of that because he's just so demented. I've never seen a villain do that before. To sort of like break down someone's morality and like mentality like that. I'm sure there are villains who have done that before. In fact, I know there are villains who have done that before. But I feel like Aswell's approach to it was very different, in my opinion. I found like the way he's voiced by another Tails in Dragon Ball voice actor. I believe his name is Tailson or Tilson Jaffe. He was Aizen in Tales of Berseria, and he's also the sushi guy in Battle of the Gods and Super during the Battle of the Gods arc with Beerus. He does a fantastic job here. I thought he did really good as Aizen in Tales of Berseria. He does a great job as Aswell. Like, I think this is probably like one of his best roles that he's ever done, in my opinion. I know he's also the lead character in Garo Vanishing Line. I haven't watched that yet. But I feel like here he does a fantastic job. He's great. So that's basically his story. It's told from the perspective of like these reports. But now Siegfried's story, that one I got sort of flashbacks from Tales of the Heroes Twin Brave. I know I keep referencing Tales. I mean, it's Bandai Namco. They're the same fucking company. And because I remember in Cress and Chester's like serious story, it opens with them being angsty as fuck about something, because I don't know Japanese, so I don't know what they were saying. I assume their village got destroyed, and they were all like, "Our village." But in this situation, even though Siegfried has been in the series since Soul Calibur 1, they actually are using his story lore from Soul Calibur 3. Because technically speaking, in Soul Calibur 1 and 2, it was really just Nightmare. In fact, I think for Soul Calibur 1, he was really only in there for like because I think Soul Calibur 1 was supposed to be like sort of a soft reboot of Soul Blade. Maybe, hard to say. I don't even, or either that or he might. You know what? I can't remember if Siegfried was a bonus character or not, because I know the Dreamcast version they don't give you everyone. In the Xbox Live version they give you everyone from the beginning because it's the arcade version, or sort of an alternative arcade version. I don't know, but I have the Dreamcast version as well. I'll have to look and see. I don't remember if they actually give you Siegfried. Maybe they did that as like just a secret character. But if you've played Soul Calibur 2, then you know that Siegfried's not in it at all. Only a Nightmare. You can unlock a Siegfried costume for Nightmare, but he still looks like Nightmare. And you could give him a different weapon, but he, still looking like, still acting and sounding and like a Nightmare. Which, Siegfried, when he comes out of being Nightmare, he is depressioed. He's all like, "How could I have done all this?" And he's sobbing. One of the chapters, like he's on the port and like he's all like, and then this guy's like, "Hey, are you Nightmare?" And he's like, "Can you talk?" "I can. Yes, I'm Nightmare. Die!" It's funny how like everyone was fearing Nightmare when he was Nightmare, but once he goes back to Siegfried, he's like, "Man, fuck that guy. Let's get him." I'm like, bro, he could kill you. He's strong. Like he's a night warrior guy. With him, what ends up happening with him is that Sophidia kind of purifies him. Both Sophidia and Keelik have the ability to. In Sophidia's case, she has the ability. In Keelik's case, he's learning the ability to purify manifestation or purify evil or whatever. And Sophidia does that for Siegfried, so he's able to kind of get a clear head, and he actually he saves Soul Calibur from the astral chaos and brings it out. And of course, in Soul Calibur 4, he becomes like the keeper of Soul Calibur, and he's the one to kind of finish the job with Nightmare in Soul Calibur 4. Because remember, Soul Calibur 4 was supposed to be the end of the story until 5 came around. And now we've got 6 to kind of go backwards and whatnot. But that's basically his story mode. Kind of him trying to sort of cope with how he was Nightmare and like try to put some useful for him, like saving Soul Calibur and kind of what do you call it? Redeem himself, I guess, and sort of set that in motion. Mitsurugi, who's like the poster boy for Soul Calibur, still not real keen on him being super young and not having facial hair, but it is what it is. His story was pretty interesting as well, because he's trying to find Soul Edge, and Edge Master kind of leads him astray, more or less, and it's more about the lesson, because Mitsurugi's, he's living for the fight. He loves fighting. He loves, testing his skills and getting stronger and whatnot. Songmina is kind of the same way. She's just a bit more hot-headed in that regard. And of course, I was mainly focusing on my boy Huang, who I really hope they make him DLC. I'll get to sort of how I feel about some of these character inclusions later on, because I think there's actually something they could have done. And I will admit that one of my big problems with the game is kind of the roster, and that's mainly coming from someone who's played all the Soul Calibur games. And I didn't grow up with the series, but I'm a pretty big fan. I started with the second game, like a lot of people did, and so I like having all these people. But now Geralt, I was actually kind of interested in as well, because I didn't really know about him that much. He basically gets a job about this witch who may have a way to go to different worlds. He gets sucked into going to the Soul Calibur world, and he's trying to find a way to get out. He's like really cynical and whatnot. He fights a bunch of people and a bunch of Malfests, and he's all like, trying to. He's a very like talking to himself kind of guy. I assume they got his regular voice actor to come in. He kind of stands out with the other performances, I think. I don't know if this actor in particular does other roles besides Geralt, but I don't know. Just his tone was a bit, and I mean mainly also the character, not just the actor, but Geralt's tone was kind of a little off balance with the rest of the characters, I think, which I think works just because he's a different kind of character. And of course, you know, he comes from a Western RPG, so obviously the way he talks is different. I don't know who was in charge of the writing of his dialogue. It seemed pretty good to me. Again, I don't know his character. I've never played The Witcher, so I don't really know for sure. But ultimately, the way he sort of figures out getting home is, you know, he goes to Edgemaster. He ends up using Soul Calibur to, like, go back home. But before he goes, he has his epic duel with Mitsurugi, because based on the cover art that you saw earlier, you know, these two characters are, like, the two most important characters in this entire game, so they fight. It isn't until Libra Soul comes around where they reveal how they met. It's a little bit like Soul Calibur 5 in that they don't really explain it in the story mode, but unlike Soul Calibur 5, they do explain it just in a different mode. Because it ultimately turns out that while Mitsurugi and your character are traveling, trying to, like, do the thing that you're trying to do in Libra Soul, I don't want to say yet because we're not there yet. Patience, viewer. I almost said listener. This isn't a podcast. I mean, it kind of is, but they met, and Mitsurugi fought him, and he's like, I want to fight that guy again. You know, basically, more or less. Gerald, was it? That's another thing. Mitsurugi mispronounces stuff a lot, and he says things weird. Like, I will say with Libra Soul, one of the things you're trying to do is close all the astral fissures, kind of like closing the Oblivion gates in Oblivion. He said, like, are you looking for those fishies? And he calls Nightmare Knight of Mare. And there's a part where he's all like, Gerald, instead of Geralt. I've gotten to a bad habit of saying Geralt. I think it's supposed to be Geralt. The White Wolf of Riviera? But that's basically Geralt's story mode. In terms of other story modes, I'm trying to think of other ones that were pretty noteworthy. I liked Keelix because he was kind of learning there. And Maxie's was... I really liked a lot of the story modes. I can't really think of any that I didn't like. But it was fun. I liked the music that was playing in between the missions. And like the, chapter, whatever, I don't know the name of that song. If someone knows the name of that song, let me know, because I want to actually, listen to it and stuff. Obviously, the music in this game is top-notch, because it's Soul Calibur. The music's always going to be awesome. In terms of gameplay, since I'll use this as sort of like a slight intermission before Libra Soul, which is, they call the mission mode, even though it's at the top of the fucking menu, which I find very strange. The combat is what you would expect from Soul Calibur. It's mostly balanced pretty well. I don't really like Reversal Edge. It kind of reminds me of Dragon Rush from Budokai 3. It's not as cheap, I think. It's a little annoying, and I find it kind of hard to sort of deflect against it, and sometimes I do it by accident. Because it is sort of like basically a free shot if you don't match up. It's more like a rock, paper, scissors thing versus sort of like match your opponent like in Budokai 3. So it actually, I think, works. It's even though I'm not real big on it, it's at least set up better than Dragon Rush, if that makes any sense. And also, the critical edges are back. Those are really cool. And like that hyper mode or whatever, I think that might be Soul Charge. I don't remember. Or Soul Burst or something. I don't remember what it's called, but it's pretty fun. You can, and of course, you can bust characters' clothes off, like you break them, and that's always kind of satisfying to do when you do an awesome attack. A lot of characters' moves are a little rearranged, like a Keelix forward horizontal, which was his hoo-hoo-ha move, where he would do like the 3 hits and the twirl at the end. That's now his basic attack, which makes sense because it is kind of a basic attack. And then his vertical, they kind of changed a little bit, which I think goes into... It might go into his reversal edge. It might not. I don't remember. But a lot of characters, their moves aren't different, per se, but it's like they're rearranged. Some characters have different moves. Like I just said, I think that little combo with his vertical, which for me is triangle, I think is like a whole new moveset. But everyone still plays pretty much how you would expect them to. It took me a little bit to kind of get used to things, but I was able to get back to my groove. And it was fun. I feel like the game is pretty fairly balanced for the most part. Though I'll get into where I don't think it's balanced later on. But overall, it's pretty good. Like I said, the music is good. The presentation is good. I don't really like how arcade is in the battle. Section. I kind of would prefer it if arcade was its own separate thing. It just seems kind of strange. I'm used to... I guess I'm just kind of used to arcade mode and story mode, and then like the mission mode being like all in one thing. Soul Calibur 4 and 5, I think, were the only ones to really do that. Of course, in 4 and 5, their mission mode was more like, it was sort of different. Like in 4, it was more like a tower thing with like different what's the word? Different conditions. Whereas 5, I think they were basically just taking what Broken Destiny did, which is like some weird like pseudo online thing that I don't. It's almost like that thing from Tekken 5 where it's like you can customize your character and like it simulates fighting other players in an offline setting. And for some reason, I got really butthurt whenever I would lose during that. And you would go through like I know I'm on a tangent, but you would go through like the different levels of like first dawn or third dawn or whatever, second queue, and I was very butthurt. I haven't played Tekken in a very long time. I'm not really a Tekken guy. If you can tell, in terms of the Tekken versus Soul Calibur world, I'm definitely a Soul Calibur kind of guy. I like Tekken, but I don't really play it that much. But yeah, I played arcade mode a few times. There's no arcade ending. You're literally just like fighting, or at least I played it on easy, I think, just because I was trying to get it done really quickly, and I didn't want to spend too much time because it was like late. And I think I had something I had to do the next day or something, but I wanted to kind of like get it done quickly, and all it gave me was just like a status screen at the end, like, hey, you won, here's your score. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I played as Raphael too. I don't know if I need to play on normal. I haven't tried. Oh, no, I take that back. I think I did do it with one of my custom characters. But speaking of that, character customization's kind of hit or miss, I think. Like, overall, it's a little better. I like that they gave you more youthful faces. They gave you all the same stuff that you had in Soul Calibur 5 for the most part. All the voices are the same. Then they gave you a few extra voices as well. The voice pitch thing is still kind of messed up. Like, it still sounds artificial. I don't even know how they got it right in Soul Calibur 4. They should have just taken a page from that. One of the new things that they let you do is pick your race. That's cool. It's definitely useful if you want to make kind of like a demonic character or like an elf character. You can make a Malfested if you want, and you can make like a fully transformed Malfested where you basically look like a rock person. Though I find it very odd that they include that, and as far as I can tell, I haven't seen any like that. I don't know if that's like a story thing or whatnot, but you can also make a Colossus or like a Darksider person. It's pretty cool, I guess. I only made mainly humans. Because this was a reboot, I made a lot of older OCs for like my early story stuff, because I was sort of doing like a weird RP thing with Soul Calibur 3 onward with my characters. I kind of took advantage of the fact that I was still kind of developing my characters and updating their designs. So I would update their designs with each new Soul Calibur game that came out. And for this one, I actually went back, which was pretty good for me because like I didn't really have like a specific like first time they're coming in storyline. Now, because of how I designed them in Soul Calibur 3, I kind of had to go just like a chapter or two back, because I do plan on publishing their actual story at some point, but I won't say more because, you know, thanks. But it was kind of fun trying to kind of figure out how to work in their designs, and I made their Soul Calibur 3 versions as well just for fun. The one thing I don't like about the name thing, you can't do spaces. That makes no fucking sense, and it was a pain in the ass to try to figure out how to save my name. I kept like, you know, typing in my name and then going out, and then like it wouldn't save. Like, what's going on? Like, that took forever. I think the poses are cool, and I like that you can like keep a pose from one weapon style while using another. I think that's really cool, and you can take the weapon away if you're trying to make your character do like a cool like martial arts pose, which is useful because one of the things I kind of ran into when making some of my custom characters is that a lot of them are martial artists, like fist fighters, because I was heavily inspired from like, you know, Mortal Kombat and Dragon Ball. So a lot of my characters that early on are fist fighters. I even had to kind of compromise one of my main female characters, because in Soul Calibur 4, or in Soul Calibur, she's a fist fighter, and I gave her the Grieve Edge in Soul Calibur 3, which is like, you know, basically kicking. So if she wants to be regal, And in Soul Calibur 4, they didn't have the custom styles, and here they don't have the custom styles either. I ended up settling on Keelik for Soul Calibur 4 and 5 and 6 as well. Making her design was kind of tricky because I didn't really have one in mind, so I kind of had to play with it a little bit. But yeah, I tried to make some younger versions of some of the original Soul Calibur characters I made. And I made a couple joke characters. I haven't really been able to make my main joke character, which is Stupid Poop, who is a derpy ninja. They don't even have the squid anymore with Nightmare's weapon. It's like they give you a bunch of like primitive like stone and wood weapons. I think the reason why they do that is because they have an orc class or an orc race that you can use. And I think what they're trying to do is for like role play purposes. If you want to like play as an orc who's using like uka uka like weapon, he's like you know, or you can be like me and I didn't actually do this, but make like a smart elf or a smart orc. I might try to make, because the racist thing, this is kind of a carryover from Broken Destiny a little bit, because I remember there was an orc sort of like base you could use in Soul Calibur Broken Destiny for the PSP, and I'm wondering if maybe I can do something with that. But other than that, like the amount of customization you can do, like the options you have in terms of what you're allowed to like give your characters, the articles of clothing, like the types of clothing and like those kind of options like gloves and whatnot, like being able to give your character gloves and like shoes and whatnot, that's okay. I still kind of like Soul Calibur 3 best where it's like layers, but I think where it kind of messed up on was being a little limited. And they give you all the Soul Calibur characters costumes, so if you want to like do like a cosplay thing, you can do that. In this game, instead of alternate costumes, it's just alternate colors. So I think you're kind of expected to sort of make your own costumes for the regular characters, because like Soul Calibur 4 and 5, you can also customize the original characters as well, and like stylize their look if you want, and give them different weapons. And one thing that's actually kind of cool in regards to Nightmare is that if you take his helmet off, Siegfried shows up. So if you want to remake his costume from Soul Calibur 2 Nightmare's costume, where it's like he's like battle damage and it's like a shirtless or topless Siegfried with like the Nightmare arm and like the legs and whatnot, you can do that, and that's actually kind of cool, I think. You can even customize Inferno as well, who I thought was kind of cool to make sort of like a weird like full power Nightmare, because as far as I can tell, Inferno is basically just like a hyper version of Nightmare from what I can tell. I look at him and I'm just all like, oh, he's basically just Nightmare. Like, I think he's supposed to be a mimic character. I think he's supposed to. I haven't actually played as him recent, like in the actual in like any main mode, just in like testing out custom characters. Because I made like this cool thing where like I use like his second costume, so it's like blue, but then like I take the Nightmare armor and like make it black. I call it like pure Nightmare or something, because like when you put the mask on, like it looks really kind of like really like evil, and like it actually looks kind of cool. And one of the characters that I made, who's like a weird wraithy demonic knight, I think he actually looked really cool as well. And I made a superhero like character, just a bunch of cool characters and some joke characters, like a knight guy that I made who was from Soul Calibur or Samurai Warriors 3. Same with his buddy, which is basically like a weird Yukimura Sonata knockoff. I also made Liu Kang, which he was pretty easy to make. I think he looks really cool. One thing they also do add is like you can add like textures and patterns to stuff, and that helps with the customization a little bit, just for kind of fun, because again, I wasn't sure who I wanted to make, because I didn't know what kind of fighting style I wanted to use. I made actually my avatar character from Pokken Tournament. I made her as close as I could. I have a little fanfic about her in mind that I might write, though it's kind of lewd. But I gave her a cool lion tattoo as well on her back. Like that's her thing. Like she has a lion tattoo on her back, and she's like, eh. And I made it to where like she looks like she bought armor like over, and she put it over her school uniform, like her outfit. And I gave her like the green scarf and everything. I was able to make her as pretty close to how she looked in Pokken Tournament. So she doesn't have her scissor anymore, but I did a thing where I gave her Sophidia's fighting style, and I made the weapons red, and I gave it like scales and whatnot. So I was able to stylize it pretty well. You can custom for the poses. You can put different poses in them. You can make the camera real slow if you're trying to get a specific frame. You can make them smile or look at the camera or do whatever. You know, all these different things. And, like, it's actually kind of cool. I actually think they did a good job on that. And hairstyles are okay as well. A lot of it really is just, like, the carryovers from the other Soul Calibur characters. And that's one thing I kind of don't like about it, which I'll use that to go into the main point of issue with the customization, is that there are not a lot of options of clothing. There's very few. And I remember I've been watching Dynasty, his videos about like Soul Calibur 6, and I remember he talked about it. I'm like, oh no, it can't be, like, because apparently like the producer Okubo said that like there's gonna be less options than in Soul Calibur 5, and that was a bit of a scare. I'm like, oh, there's gonna be less. Like, it turns out yes, there actually are. There actually is a fair amount less. I was able to make mostly who all I want. I kind of had to compromise a little bit. And the second character I made, I would have kind of preferred if he had a long sleeve shirt, but I think he looks pretty cool the way he does. I was glad that I was able to give him sort of like that Saint Seiya like crown thing, because I was kind of going for like a certain like look of like, you know, he's holding on to like this false identity that he has, but he's slowly going into his own person. I say holding on to, but it's more like, you know, pieces of his false personality, or I don't want to say first, because he doesn't have a personality disorder. If I say more, I'm going to spoil his story, and you're going to hear about it soon, eventually, maybe. But you know what I mean. And yeah, like, they really should have given us more options in the customization. I think they're going to fix that in the DLC, because I know there's supposed to be some parts that you get in the DLC. And I think that's what they're going for. I think when he said there's less options than in Soul Calibur 5, I think he meant base game only. And I think they knew that, like, yeah, we need to put in more stuff. And I know the next DLC after when 2B comes out, I think will be the first set of armor and whatnot. I think the season pass also has, like, I'm a little confused on what the season pass offers. I can't tell if like it has exclusive content that you have to get the season pass to get, or if it's literally just, you pay for all the DLC, or like it counts for all the DLC up to a certain point or something. And who knows, there might be more anyway. So like, I know they want, like, we got like 2 or 3 more characters to be announced, so, but that's a major problem. That's besides the fact of no custom styles, which I really kind of wish they would do that, even if they did it the way they did in Soul Calibur 3, to where it's technically not original styles. It's just that the characters who have those styles are bonus characters, like Huang and whatnot. If they did it like that, I'd be kind of okay with it. I had to kind of compromise a little bit. Geralt's style for one of the main characters I wanted to use, I think it actually works out best for him. He doesn't have 2 swords, and he doesn't really use magic, but I was able to kind of compromise. And I think I actually was able to work with what I had pretty well. And I ended up using Geralt's style for my character in Libra of Soul. And I think he looks pretty cool. I was able to kind of make someone kind of interesting looking. I made just some avatar like I usually do, like the red hair and the beard and the headband and whatnot. I don't like the beard on him. It's sort of like that. I like, if you see my real beard in like real life, you know my beard is pretty thick. It's not super long or anything, but it's not like a carefully organized scruff or anything like that. It's like a full like beard. And I like doing that with my characters. I like giving them like an actual real hair beard. And I didn't like that you couldn't really do that in this. Or you could, but I would have to pick a different face, which goes into my issue that they've kept with Soul Calibur 4, is that they make the faces and the facial hair connect. So if you want, like, you can't like pick your face and then pick facial hair. You have to pick like both in like one thing. And I don't know why they're doing that. Like in Soul Calibur 3, you could pick any face you want, any facial hair you want. Like, that was perfect. And you had different options for facial hair. Like 3, I think overall probably has the best customization. It's just more limiting a little bit. And obviously, like, the graphically doesn't look as good, but I feel like overall, I feel like I can kind of make more or less who I want. If they just use 3 as a base and like put in the additions that 4, 5, and 6 have had with the graphics update, it would be perfect. It would be friggin' perfect. But they're just not there, and I don't know if they'll ever figure it out. I don't know if it's just like a budget, or like they don't want to put in that resource or whatever. Frankly, I could have done without the raises thing. I would have just had them be like a base. You can choose like a preset of armor, and some of it's kind of cool. With Inferno, you can give them like a gladiator thing, and with the Lizard Man, you can give them like a tribal look. And it's funny because like you can make a lizard person, but like and they don't even have Lizard Man's actual like fighting. So I think he's probably going to be DLC because they have his style in the game. You just can't use it. So I'm wondering if he's going to be in the game, which I think that would actually be probably a good idea, because then you've got like a male counterpart to Sephidia, which I think is important. And you could even say Geralt is sort of like a male counterpart to Xianghua if you want like just a straight sword. I had to kind of compromise a little bit with one of my characters who sometimes uses a sword, but I gave him Xianghua style because it's sort of like the kung fu sort of like flowing aspect of it, and I also like just like the shape of the sword. You can customize the color of the sword too, which is good. So if you want to make like a really custom looking one, Geralt's you can't. You also can't. You can customize them, but it's more like you're giving them a different weapon, because they give you different weapons you can use of his fighting style, but like you can't like customize his look. Apparently with 2B you will be able to. In fact, they're going to give you 2B's outfit as well. And I might be able to use her hair for another character if I wanted to like sort of do some more stuff. Like if this is going to be the final Soul Calibur thing, which I don't think it will, because it seems to be doing pretty well. Or at least well enough. You know, I won't speak for Namco, but you know, I think, you know, we'll see. But yeah, overall, the customization's okay. It's not perfect, and I really wish they would have gone the extra mile. But again, I think the DLC is going to kind of make up for that. Who knows? Maybe we'll get a custom style as well. I doubt it, but because it'd be kind of awkward to put that in, because I don't know, it would be weird, unless they wanted to do like a thing where it's like, oh, you can make a character using an older version of Keelik's style. If you want to play as, if you want to make a character that uses Keelik's fighting style from Soul Calibur 3, for example, you know, you could do that. I don't know how that would work because the move sets are pretty close to each other. But like maybe like a Hall of Fame thing where like, oh, fight using Huang style, Li Long style, or Patroclus' style, you know, whatever. Shiba style, Leisha style, which are basically knockoffs of Keelik and Xianghua, but like some moves are taken away, or Natsu, which is basically Taki. So that's the customization. I really think they should have worked on it a little bit. Now for Libra of Soul. You make a character, and you are being sucked into the void, and Zasalamel breaks you out and says like, hey, I saved you, but there's a catch. If you're going to die unless you absorb all the power of these things called astral fissures, which are basically the gates into the astral plane or the astral world, which is sort of like the epicenter of Soul Calibur and Soul Edge, and you absorb them. And it's sort of like a weird like RPG kind of thing. You can do side quests and whatnot. You can't like walk around and whatnot like you can like Skyrim or whatever. But you're on a map, and you go through and you like reach certain points. The way you do hit certain points and like do side quests is kind of weird, because like you have to choose to explore an area. They show you a little like circular cursor thing, but you can't like move it manually. Like you have to go to like a drop down list of like the different places you've been to and go from there. You can't just like move the cursor along, click here, and then it does like the cares thing, and then a warrior stands in your way, and then you fight someone. I think that's how they should have done it. That's one thing I think they should have definitely fixed, and you'll see what I mean when I show off the mode. I don't even know what I'm going to do though, because you know, one of the things that I kind of had issues with. But yeah, so that's basically how it starts off. You first meet Maxi, and he helps you out. Then you meet, I think, Keelik or Mitsurugi or somebody. And you meet some of these other characters, and you'll meet all different kinds of characters. Zasalama is kind of like your guardian angel in a way. Not really, but like he's watching you and whatnot. And he tells you about his lore, about how like he perfected reincarnation and or resurrection, but the way it works is that he's like reborn constantly, but he'll still like die. He just basically can't die, and he's reborn, and so he has to basically go through the entire life cycle over and over and over again. You know, that whole thing. But you eventually meet up with Grow, and you team up with him because you find out that Aswell is trying to mess with the astral fissures. And he's like, oh, well, we've got a common goal, so let's work together. Have you absorb the astral fissures in place of Aswell so you can get stronger and he won't. And you ultimately end up fighting him because you figure out his plans for the ultimate seed and whatnot. And you work with his partners, not Curtis, but like this one, I think Dion, and then I forget the chick's name, but she's really cynical. You work together with them, and you fight Aswell's followers, and what basically happens, you do a strike on Aswell. Grow realized like in order for me to like actually do real damage, I have to unleash my full manifestation powers. I have to basically go Super Saiyan, and so he does that, and he and Aswell fall off an edge, and it's believed that they have been defeated, and the day has been won at the cost of losing Grow along with Aswell. But it turns out Aswell is still alive, so you have to go fucking fight him, and he was a pain. And that's one thing that kind of happened. Like at first, it started off kind of what I would expected, but it got really hard, and a lot of it was sort of like level range bullshit. Like, oh, you're 10 levels, you're like 15 levels under your opponent. Well, your opponent's now suddenly really hard, and it's not even about skill anymore. And that was really annoying. It wasn't too bad, but I had to kind of play in a way I haven't played Soul Calibur in a very long time. It almost kind of reminded me of how I used to play Soul Calibur 2, where I didn't do too many like interesting moves, but this time I had to turtle a lot. Grinding didn't take too long, and maxing out my ability, my like level of my weapon style didn't take too long. I still have to do the weapon master, like the mastery mode where you get that really beefy weapon, because you get like weapons that are like they're stylized as the regular weapons that you can pick from in the custom character mode, but like they have different attributes and different levels. I don't think you can change the color, or if you can, I didn't for whatever reason. You can change your character's look. I think you can actually change your full character if you want. Like I said, I made my typical avatar for these kind of games: red hair, beard, and a sword. Except I would have preferred a bigger beard, but I don't know. Maybe they'll fix that in DLC. So yeah, I had to grind a lot. A lot of it was like doing side missions, which I was initially ignoring because I was trying to, get the entire story and, just play through it, mainly in time for the podcast, which I will say that review is also up if you want to listen to that. I probably should have said that earlier. But there'll be a link in the description if you want to listen. You know the drill by now. So I had to do a lot of grinding, and I was able to, I think, get to like 70 or 80, like I think 60 or 70 by the end. And I had to do that to fight Aswell. And it took me several tries to finally beat it, and I finally did. And it felt like as I closed our level gap, he got easier and easier until finally I was able to win pretty easily. And I think I even did my critical edge to defeat him. And so you defeat him, and the day is won. However, you start. This is actually kind of weird. It's like, I wonder if Grow's still around. And so you start looking for Grow, and it turns out he's actually still around. He's apparently called like the Raging Demon or something, because he's gone in. He's given into his manifestation, and is basically like a bad guy now. That's kind of what I meant about, Tales of Soul Calibur. It's like, we have to kill our friend because he's the final boss, kind of thing. Whereas Aswell was sort of like the what do you call it? Friggin', what's a good example? Cedric from Tales is as well as Cedric, and Grow is Richard from Tales of Graces. Kind of like that situation a little bit, not to the same level, but a similar situation. But so you go looking for Grow. You figure out that he's actually in like Antarctica because he grew up in the snow, or like Scandinavia. Yeah, Scandinavia. That's where he's at. And so you go there and you fight him there. Now, Soul Calibur and Soul Edge play into this in that you have a choice more or less on which one you want based on the choices you make. They make it kind of obvious what you're going for. It's not every choice, but they indicate it based on a blue flame and a red flame. And I always chose the blue flame because, like, well, I want Soul Calibur. And you have your spirit scales, and they show you kind of like where you're at. I always chose the Soul Calibur option mainly because that's probably what I would have done in any other game, but also just because I wanted Soul Calibur. And you end up having to use Soul Calibur to defeat Aswell, and that's how you win. They don't give you Soul Calibur to use as like an actual weapon. Like it doesn't like it's not like a Soul Calibur version of your fighting style's weapon. It's not like that. Like in Soul Calibur 3 and 2, like really in all Soul Calibur games, I think. I think except for 5 maybe. And the same thing happens here. And I suspect that there are 2 different endings depending on what you go for. Since I chose Soul Calibur, I was able to save Grow, and that ending where it shows him being like, "I thank you for saving me. You know, you're my good friend. Like, if you need any help, try and find me. All right, see you later. It's been a pleasure." Like, that was a really touching and like just heartwarming section. Like, I almost kind of felt like I actually really helped someone there. That made me feel good to do that, because it was done in the way of the regular story mode where they show the artwork and the mugshots and the voiceover, so I got to hear him say all these things. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. That's so fucking cool. I'm glad I saved him. So, and then the epilogue happens where you can basically just do more missions. Like I said, I think I kind of screwed up Raphael's because they gave you a choice, and I know it doesn't really matter. I assume you can probably do or like it'll come up again because he's all like, "Let me know if you change your mind," but he wants me to help him find Soul Edge, and it gave me an option of help him or not, and it showed like the red flame and the blue flame. I'm thinking like, well, you know, I really want to help him because I want to see what happens if I get like an extra story mode mission, and he's one of my favorite characters, so I want to help him, but he's not doing it for the right reasons, and he's looking for Soul Edge. It's going to end up killing him. I don't want to fucking help him there. I'm trying to help you, man. But he was all like, oh, that's too bad. And he apparently poisoned. That was another thing. We sparred, but he poisoned me, so I was weakened. So he was a sleazeball. I'm like, Raphael, you're betraying your good name. But and the show Amy as well. She doesn't actually fight, though. It's a little annoying. And I kind of got a little butthurt because the mugshots in this section, they're using the in-game models for the characters, and Huang shows up, and Amy shows up, and a bunch of other characters who were in the story mode with actual like real drawn portraits show up, and that made me kind of triggered a little bit because I'm all like, well, you've got Huang's model right there, and it kind of looked like they just made him in like the custom character mode. And I think they did the same thing for Amy. I think the main thing with Amy is that they gave her like her hair. Like I think they modeled in her hair, which I'm almost wondering if she's gonna be a if she's gonna be a character that you can play as, like DLC. And I hope so. The current rumor, based on like previous leaks, is that Lizardman and Huang are gonna be the next DLC characters. Lizardman makes sense, I think, because one, the Lizardman race is in the game anyway, and two, his fighting style is in the game. The axe and shield, and then Amy as well, I think makes sense because of how she looked in the game, and she's also a fan favorite. And also, my boy Huang, mainly just because I want him. If he was in the game, I would have used his fighting style, and I would have destroyed Libra of Soul. Turtle or not, I would have destroyed Libra of Soul because I am fucking balls. I'm fucking epic balls. Epic awesome with Huang. I'm really good with Cassandra as well, and in this game I really did well with Sophidia. And I like Keelik as well. And I'm pretty good with Geralt. I don't know who my best character is, but I'm in terms of general Soul Calibur 3, I destroy with Huang. Like, straight up, I destroy. Like, even with the difficulty spike that came up, I think I would have been fine. I also did some of Raphael's. I was trying to do one of Xianghua's where it takes place after the story mode, and where like Xianghua wants to spar a little bit. And of course, I also fought I think Ling Yu, and that's where she mentioned the whole thing with Alacia. Song Mina also mentions Yun Sung by name, he doesn't show up. So I'm also wondering if maybe Yun Sung will be playable. Which, if he's playable in place of Huang, I think that'd be okay, though. With all these different important custom characters that use different styles, I think they should have brought back the bonus characters and kind of did what they sort of did with Soul Calibur 4, where it's a unique design, but they're using another character's fighting style. I actually kind of like that, and I feel like here it would have made more sense, because, like, if you wanted to make Cassandra, you could do that, but you could just give it her Sophia's style. With Amy's, you could have given her Raphael's. It wouldn't have really made much sense, or it would have looked weird, but you could have done that. And it would have made sense, kind of, since he taught her how to use a sword. With Huang, or with Yin Sung, like vice versa, if either one of them is in the game, you could use the other one for like a bonus character and use their style. Like, that's what I think the bonus character should have been. Like, and use Rock for, like, use Astaroth for a Rock or something. Use Maxi for Li Long if you want to, even though I think his style, he uses 2 nunchucks. And of course, Rock uses a giant maul. He doesn't use an axe, like a giant, like, 2-handed axe. He uses like a giant 2-handed mace or a maul or whatever you want to call it. But I think that's what they should have done, because there are a few characters like this, like, merchant chick. I don't remember her name, but she's real sleazy and she was actually kind of attractive. They should have made her. If they wanted to make Maxi's crewman, they could have done that. Ling Yu, they could have done that, and Amy. Like I said, like, you know, there are a few characters they could have made in the story mode that they could have made actual characters. Like Curtis as well. Just he uses when you fight him, and he uses Gro's style. So, like, there you go. Just do that. If you wanted to be, you know, kind of fancy, I guess you could have used Aswell for Algol. It would have been kind of weird. I think you would have had to compromise a little bit and sort of like alter the way it looks and take away the gauntlets, but I think that's what they should have done. But yeah, Libra of Soul was an okay mode. I just think it got a little brutal at times, and I think its execution on how you explore was a little weak. I liked doing the side missions and, like, talking to people. Like, one of my favorites is the one where you meet that guy who does the riddles, and you go to his house and you meet his sick daughter, who she wants to experience the world, and she keeps asking for, like, different things, and eventually she gets well enough to kind of go out on her own. She decides, I want to go on a big journey. That was a fun one. And what do you call it, the Wind Shrine one, I kind of like that one. That one was actually kind of sad once Talon showed up, because the other character they introduced really early on, because I did that mission early. Lost her, because I think she either dies or goes away or something, and Talon replaces her or something. But it was definitely fun. Arthur as well, he shows up, which that would have been another thing, because, like, you know, Arthur, he in terms of who Arthur is as a character in Soul Calibur, he's basically the alternative Mitsurugi, and they use Mitsurugi's fighting style for that. I'm just like, oh well, just do that. That would have been perfect. I really think they should have done that. They probably won't, but I really think that's what they should have done. If they wanted to kind of get away with not making a full brand new character with DLC or delaying the game or whatever to, like, get them in the base game, just, like, give us the parts or whatever, and then, like, custom, like, build them into the game using the custom style. Like, that's what Samurai Warriors does now, where basically, like, any non-major character is made using the character creator, and that's actually a good way to get practice on designing them as well. That happened with Masayuki, and he looks a little similar to how, in Spirited Sonata, he looks a little similar to how he looked in, how I saw him in Samurai Warriors 4 Empires, at least. I mean, that's kind of cool. That's just what I would have done. I think they really should have at least thought about it, because that's actually something I kind of liked about Soul Calibur 3 a little bit, like the bonus characters. It was kind of cool, like, because Huang and Li Long are in it. Like, that's actually technically, excluding any characters that were introduced in 4, 5, and 6, that's probably the most complete Soul Calibur roster. You know, and that's one of the reasons why it's my favorite, because it's one of the most because there's just a lot to do in that one. But this one's definitely up there. I haven't had a chance to talk about the voice acting, I don't think. A lot of the characters are recast. like I said, Raphael's is the same. I think Sophitia is the same. Nightmare and Siegfried are voiced by Kirk Thornton, who, you know, I think most people would probably know as Jade Curtis from Tales of the Abyss, and he's also Shadow the Hedgehog now. I feel like Kirk Thornton might be the best Siegfried. To me, he kind of sounds like a mix between Crispin Freeman from Soul Calibur 3 and Roger Craig Smith from 4 onward. 4 and 5, really. And Legends, I guess. He sounds like kind of an in-between. He really brought his A game for this role. Like, when he's sobbing in the beginning of, like, Siegfried's story, he is sobbing hardcore. And he sounds so good. Like, you can kind of hear the Kirk Thornton, but, like, he sounds a little more subdued, or, like, more... The texture of his voice is a little more subtle, so it sounds more realistic, and it sounds really good. I think it's probably one of the best. I think it's probably his best role. I think he also directed the game as well, so that might be part of the reason, maybe. But he did a great job, and the direction was also really good. Ray Chase as Mitsurugi was okay. It kind of sounded a little like Patrick Seitz, which I don't know if that really fits Mitsurugi. It kind of fits this character, but I didn't really like how, to me, it sounded a little too much like Patrick Seitz, and I kind of like that Oriental texture that they gave him, or that he's had in like 2 onward. Everyone else sounded pretty good. Like Aswell sounded really good. Obviously, Gross sounded really good. The narrator, I think, is really improved. Because at first it sounded he was doing sort of like a round 1 fight, whereas in this one he's like round 1 fight. Like, he actually does a really good. He kind of tries to sort of mimic, I think, the old guy. I think he actually is really improved. And I was really pleased. I think the voice acting was really good. I don't remember if I ever talked about Soul Calibur 5. I might have, but I know for the podcast I might have brought this up. But I didn't like the narration for 5. It sounded too different and sort of like off model, if you will, or out of character for Soul Calibur. I liked sort of like that larger than history, you know, larger than life, you know, kind of thing, like transcending history and the world, a tale of souls and swords, eternally retold. And he does that too, but it really improved. It sounds a lot better in this one because he has like that extra punch and whatnot. He doesn't talk with the same kind of inflection as the original narrator, but he still sounds pretty good. Yeah, and Keelig is still Grant George. He did a great job here. I think Wendy Lee is still Xianghua. I think the guy who does Maxie is the same. Astaroth is still Michael McConaughey. He does a great job. They all sound really good. And like I said, Amy is still Heather Hogan. I think she's also filling in for Cassandra as well, I think. Because Cassandra has some voiceover lines as well. Kira Buckland, I believe, is Talon, and obviously she's 2B for when that comes in. So, and I believe they got Geralt's a regular voice actor. In the Japanese version, it's the guy who did Hit in Dragon Ball Super, who also is a Wolverine in the movies. And like I said, Takahiro Sakurai is Gro. I assume Nobuyuki Hiyama is Nightmare and Siegfried. I assume like the cast in the Japanese version is mostly the same. I think Toshiyuki Morikawa does Mitsurugi. And I think the guy who does Cao Cao in Dynasty Warriors is Raphael, I believe. Don't quote me on that. And Soichiro Hoshi, who is like a bunch of different characters. He was Yukimura and Sengoku Basara. He was Keel, and I was thinking of Takeshi Kusao because I was talking about Yukimura. He was also Keel's Zabel or Zybel, however you want to say it, in Eternian. You know, he's Kazuma and Scride. You know, all that. I assume he does it good. I didn't play the game in Japanese. I've heard a little bit of it from like videos and whatnot. I played the game in the English though because I just like the English voices. The biographies, that was one thing that I kind of missed from really 4 and 5. 4 kind of had it, but it was more like a timeline, and you had to kind of check the characters to really kind of see. This one, this one's pretty good. I kind of miss the way where like it was like that character showcase where you could see all that other stuff. Like it would talk about like their fighting style and their weapons and where they were at, as well as like a voice library. We could hear all their voices, and depending on the game, you could press or depending on the game, but also depending on if you were playing with Japanese voice or not, you could press a button and it would pull up the voice actor. That was really cool. But yeah, it's still pretty cool. I haven't looked too much into the library stuff, but I know that's also kind of fun to look at because they give you like nice bonuses and whatnot. Yeah. Overall, I think it was a really, really well done game. Just some minor stuff like the roster again. I wish that we had like Huang at least. That would have made up for a lot of it because I feel like he's sort of a key character type missing. I know we have Xianghua, who basically fights pretty similar to Huang, and they even give you the Qing Long. I think it's called the Qing Long, which is basically like that curved sword. So if you want to do that, you can. But it's using Xianghua's style, so it's not as not as fun to me. And I'm not the kind of person that needs Li Long along with Maxi, but having Huang I think would have been cool, or Yun Sung. I would have been okay with either one. Of course, for me, like I would love to just have all the like pull like a Mortal Kombat Armageddon where you just pull in everybody, along with the character customization. Because honestly, like I don't think anyone would be complaining about the custom styles if you had literally every character from Soul Calibur, because there'd be so many different fighting styles you could pick from. Even if some of them are kind of repeats of each other, you would at least have like the different options and whatnot. And the bonus character idea I think would have been cool to kind of compromise with this. I would have been okay with that actually, provided that you actually give us either Yunsung or Huang to begin with. If you give us Huang, it'd be ideal, but if you give us Yunsung, I'd be okay with Huang being a bonus character using his style. Libra of Soul mode got kind of brutal and kind of annoying sometimes, and I didn't really like kind of that they told you what when it came to like using Soul Calibur, or when it came towards trying to get Soul Calibur or Soul, as they basically straight up told you which choice would give you what, and that kind of spoils the fun a little bit. I think I would have preferred it if it was you didn't notice, like, or it would tell you after. I mean, obviously I would want to stick with Soul Calibur, but it would also maybe add some replay value as well, because like if you don't know, you might like, oh well, what happens if I go back and try that? You can have multiple save slots as well, so it's not like too much of a big deal. I feel I'm worried that I might have to replay the entire Libra of Soul just to get the get that Raphael thing. Either that, or I could just like play up to where he's supposed to spawn. It's not too long. I think it's like 5 or 6 chapters. It didn't take too long. Hopefully he'll show up again, because like the side missions and whatnot, they show up kind of randomly depending on where you go. So I think I would probably just have to explore a little bit. I mean, it would cost money though, and it depends on the terrain as well. Like going to anywhere from Ostrheinsburg is a pain and like really expensive in the game, because like it's surrounded by like the mountains and whatnot. So like it's apparently really expensive, because going across the mountains really fucking tough, guys. Even though this is Soul Calibur, I know it takes a lot of cues from real life, but it's Soul Calibur. It can have some fun if it wants to. But overall, I think this game was actually really good. It was really polished and a lot of fun. I'm going to continue to play it. In fact, I'll probably play it soon, since I have to record footage for this long review, but also, because I like Soul Calibur. If you want to play online, let me know. I'm not that good at Soul Calibur compared to the big people. I'd like to think I'm pretty good at the game, but I'm not like super hardcore or anything, so go easy on me. Be gentle, daddy. So yeah, pretty good game besides my nitpicks. I would give it maybe, I think I gave it it's like a weird 7.9 or an 8.3 or what. It's a good out of 10. So I'm gonna say probably I'll say an 8 out of 10. It was really good, but not perfect. I think maybe now the character customization thing, I think that'll be fixed with the DLC now. Should we really have to do DLC to get something that should have been in the game in the beginning? I'll let you decide on that. I think probably just like timing management and budgeting issues probably got in the way of that, so I'm not going to blame them too much for it, especially since I love Soul Calibur. I'm going to get the game anyway. And if there was, console exclusive characters, I'd probably, like, I remember thinking, like, okay, well, I guess I'll have to get the Xbox One version, even though I don't have an Xbox One to play, or I'll get the PC version to kind of circumvent the Xbox One version, and if it comes out for Switch, I'll have to get that, because they're going to put in Link. Or someone from Fire Emblem. I remember it was rumored that Yuri Lowell from Vesperia was going to be in it, which I would kind of be okay with. I think that would actually be kind of fun. He would stand out a bit, and I would kind of rather have Lloyd, just on the grounds that we've had Lloyd before. But, that's just me. I'm a Lloyd boy. So, yeah. Overall, very good game, and I would definitely recommend it if you like Soul Calibur, especially if you haven't played Soul Calibur in a while and you got kind of burned. Maybe even if you got burned from Soul Calibur 3, even though it's still my favorite, like, I'd say right now Soul Calibur 6 is like right under 3, so like in second or third place depending. I'm kind of torn between 2 and 6 for my favorites. It's really, like, 3 is just kind of my overall favorite. I don't really have I can't really categorize all of them in like order of how much I like them, because I feel like I enjoy the gameplay and I enjoy what the game gives me, but at the same time, like, the extra features and the customization keeps going down a little bit, whereas 5 brought it up a little bit and 6 brought it up even further, but it's still not perfect. I still say 3 is probably overall the best, even though it doesn't have all the cool features that you can do in the later games, but that's a different subject, I suppose. So yeah, thank you all for watching, and I hope you give this game a try. This is Flames Tasuke signing out. See you later, and let your soul burn.